Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Vectra AI podcast. My name is Nicole Drake. I am a product marketing manager here at Vectra AI. And today we have Dale O'Grady from our technical marketing team to talk through integrating with the SIEM. So thank you, Dale, for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me. Very happy to talk to you today about SIEM integrations with Vectra.
Perfect. So we're going to jump right into it. So our first question is, what is the SIEM? Why, bother integrating with the SIEM, essentially?
Yeah, of course. So, everybody knows that, at the highest level, SIEM security, incident event management, and it's all built around, consolidating data. At the end of the day, taking data, multiple data sets, detections, audit, config, that type of thing, from multiple data sources, NDR, EDR, firewalls, etc., and consolidating them into a single platform. Now, traditionally, that's done to detect, analyze, and respond to threats. And what we will be talking about today is going into maybe a little more details on, well, why integrate Vectra with your SIEM? Because, certainly we can greatly improve upon the overall efficiency and really do some great SIEM optimization, which I'd like to be able to speak to you today about that.
Perfect. So let's dive in. So I know you just touched on this a little bit, but I just, going to give you the floor to go a little bit deeper into the type of integrations we do with the vendors listed here, and etc.
Yeah, there's a whole plethora of SIEM vendors out there, and they vary all a little bit, right? And they're certainly in their functionality and their capabilities, but fundamentally, at the end of the day, they're trying to achieve certain things. Integration and the integration levels, we integrate with several. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch. It's just a list of perhaps some of the common SIEMs that we have integration with. Direct integration. There's indirect integration. Essentially, there's ways of getting data. Fundamentally, you want to get data from Vectra in a format into the SIEM that the SIEM can accept and store into their tables and parse to allow the SIEM to do its thing. And what it sets it apart from other SIEMs, its ability to do the different visualizations and its sorting capabilities and correlation and everything. So, we certainly integrate with a lot of the leading SIEMs, the IBM QRadars and the Splunks and the Sentinels, the Elastics, the Chronicles, the Cronstruts, et cetera, et cetera. And we do integrate with a lot of them. And then we also have mechanisms through, something we call a syslog connector, a SIEM connector, to essentially provide our data to almost any SIEM that can accept syslog. And because we want to be able to provide our rich data to essentially any platform that's out there that's capable of accepting and correlating data for the SIEM use cases.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great point. I know that it doesn't matter what SIM you have. We can, work with it to enable, better efficiency overall for, like you mentioned, threat detection, investigation, and responses is key
Correct.
here. Yeah,
Correct.
perfect. So we will jump into our next question, which is, how do these integrations work?
All right. So yeah, if you could just bring up the diagram here, we can just sort of go through how it works and where it fits. So how it works, we've got a couple platforms. So we've got a Respond user experience and we've got our Quadrant user experience. This is a visual of our Respond user experience, but fundamentally they're very similar. On the far left side, you've got the Vectra data, and on the right side, you've got your SIEM and the SIEM outcomes. So technically how the data gets into there varies a little bit between the Quadrant and the Respond UX. So let's just take a deeper look into the Respond UX and really how it works. So Respond UX, it's API driven. Okay, so in this case, there is API queries done from the SIEM side or outside of Vectra, querying the Vectra platform for, as I mentioned off the top, data sets, certain data sets. And we have these event-driven data sets. So things like entity scoring and detections, those are data sets. Entity scoring is the actual entity itself. What's the score of the entity, right? Now, this entity has a certain risk profile or a certain risk level, which is very valuable data. Now, where does that risk level come from? Well, it comes from the evidence that's presenting on that entity, i.e., detections. So the event-driven forwarding that we have of this data allows us to keep track as the life cycle of a detection, as the life cycle of an entity evolves. Detections ebb and flow. Detections may continue over time. Think of something like a long-running port scan, and we keep updating the data. So that data gets queried in what we call the events pipeline, and then it's pulled in and eventually is transformed, normalized, and registered in the SIEM, right, and stored in the SIEM tables. There's additional data sets. It doesn't have to end at just, your scoring for entities and detections. We have a concept of lockdown. So when you actually want to do active enforcement of hosts or entities, and including accounts, whether or not they've been remediated, have they been locked down, when they were locked down, when did they come out of lockdown? That's valuable data to hold as well, as long as additional data audits. Audits is always something that makes its way into the security realm as well, because configuration changes, what's happening on the platform. The overall platform health has made its way outside of traditional IT operations into some of the SOC, because of the platform itself is responsible for monitoring every nook and cranny of the environment. And so we need to make sure that it's running and it's working alongside the detection data and the other event-driven data that's coming in. And then there's all what we call metadata or network telemetry. And this is all the ancillary data that goes with it. What's the forensic data that goes alongside to prove the various detections and scoring? All of that is requested through API queries to the endpoints in Vectra. The data is retrieved, it's transformed, it's stored in the SIEM, and then in the SIEM, this is where you get your outcomes, and your outcomes will vary a little bit depending on the SIEM that you have, but essentially, from a consumption side, on the user side, you're going to have things like dashboards and visualizations. You're going to have correlated events or alerts. You're certainly going to have your forensic data in the form of telemetry or logs to go through, and then all the query and correlation that goes with it. Now, where does it fit, and why we believe that you should really integrate Vectra into your SIEM is because we start at the attack surface, right? So I mentioned Vectra is looking at every nook and cranny inside your hybrid environment, right? So we're monitoring that. So full attack surface coverage, we're getting a lot of data from there. Then we apply our attack signal intelligence, and we have this ability to surface these attacker behaviors, these high fidelity attacker behaviors from network, from NDR, from identity, IDR, and from cloud, CDR. That includes platforms, control planes, that type of thing from clouds, as well as SaaS, things like Microsoft 365. So all of that rich signal that has undergone this very advanced processing can now be summarized in the SIEM. And that, and when it gets to the SIEM, then you can consolidate, alert, and correlate. There's a lot of stuff to the right of this diagram, the right of the SIEM, but that is going to vary drastically depending on the environment. Some environments might send that over to a different system to create incidents, a ServiceNow, a Jira, a ticketing system. Some may manage the incidents as alerts right from the SIEM. Some may put it into their SOAR, maybe an XOR, Demisto, a Phantom type thing, and create incidents from there. Really depends, but the important part is getting it into that form where you can start and begin your actions on really investigating incidents.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to double click on a point that you make. So when we talk about our entity centric, detections through our AI and our solution, we don't just mean, an identity. We mean an identity and a host. So any account, and like you mentioned, any attack surface, whether it's network or cloud, whatnot. So I really wanted to call that out because I think it's important with our solution specifically on how we help enrich the SIEM, for a better overall SOC experience. So
Absolutely.
to help, essentially reduce the time to detection and remove, any latency in investigation response. So, a hybrid attack won't take place. So thank you for that. That was really well put. So I appreciate that. Well, so we'll jump into the next slide here. So what does this integration mean? Essentially, what are the benefits of integrating, a SIEM with the Vectra AI platform?
Yeah, so let's go into some of the individual use cases, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, why integrate? It's to reduce the exposure, to improve that signal clarity, to maximize talent and technology and get the most out of it. So everyone says they're going to do that, but so how do we do it, right? Why is ours different than the next one? So high fidelity signals, and you were just touched upon that. And it's more than just that here's a very rich signal that says here's a very specific attacker behavior. But as you mentioned, drawing all the conclusions together, tying the host together with the entity, putting all of that together and surfacing a high fidelity signal is something that you used to have to build manually in the SIM
Yep.
through analytics rules and things like that, and the various analytics. Those are very costly to build, costly to maintain. So we do all of that as part of our attack signal intelligence. So there's a ton of heavy lifting that's been done up front. So that way it's now summarized and provided to the SIM. So you're still using your SIM. You're still getting value out of your SIM from a storage mechanism, from a consolidation mechanism, without having to put all of the time and effort into building and maintaining all of your own analytics rules. Now, from that data, you also get pre-canned visualizations and dashboards. So that you want to get a higher level view of what's happening in the environment. We're visual beings by nature. So being able to visualize something as opposed to looking at millions of line items of records is going to help for the SOC efficiency, help pinpoint areas where you want to draw some attention to. That goes into things like quick filtering and correlation. There's more than enough tools for the SOC to know, understand, and use. So the ability to just do a quick filter. I want to know everything that's happening with this entity. Just tell me. So including things like that are all pre-canned, pre-filtering, combining events and telemetry. So now taking something that is normally in a previous world would have just been alert driven. Here's an alert. You go figure everything out for yourself. To here's an alert, by the way, here's all the associated data that goes with it. So now you can combine it. You can also do rapid pivots. We know that every tool, while you try to have what everyone claims they want, the single pane of glass, the reality is that's not possible. But what is possible is being able to pivot directly into the element that you're looking at or investigating at any one point of time without losing your bearings, without having to go and figure out what's all my creds, how do I log in, where do I go, how do I find it? And a lot of people just give up because it's time consuming. And so rapid pivots right into where you need to investigate, and then the customization that goes with it. So the ability to expand upon that, take what you know from your environment, how you operate and your workflows, and create your additional custom views, your custom queries that allow the SOC to rapidly answer questions that they will typically need to answer when they're doing investigation. And only when you combine all of that can you reduce that exposure, improve the clarity, and maximize your talent and the tooling at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great points. I mean, ideally, you want a solution that contextualizes everything so you can actually see the hybrid, attack progression. Lateral movement is a big thing in our industry. So I think, our solution really helps with that through all the points that you just mentioned. And it helps, the SOC team, in both time and resources spent doing all those manual tasks as well, especially in the SIM. It can be very cumbersome and complex. So great points. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty, so that concludes our podcast for today. Thank you all for joining. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel where all of our podcasts are located. And thank you again, Dale, for your time today and your expertise. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me, Nicole, and be well, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.